I've been just counting the seconds. Couldn't wait to get to this. I learned so much. I'm so glad I'm reading this material. Ironically, even though I wrote it, I feel it's like all brand new. Today we're going to talk about the wannabe omnipresent woman. And literally, I've had so many thoughts. I've heard so many things all week. I'm like, oh, I got to remember that. I got to remember that. I got to remember that. I'm like, oh, I would need a 2-hour presentation. So quickly, the wannabe omnipresent woman. Back to the junior God batch, remember? Eve touched the tree because she wanted knowledge of good and evil, so she could be like God. So when you start thinking about being like God, you cover things like omnipresent. We're going to look at omnipotent next week. Then we're going to do omniscient. Then we're going to do, we're going to shalom, sovereign. We're going to look at those qualities. But for the omnipresent woman, I have a verse for you that I have to start with because I'm so guilty. One thing about the omnipresent woman, the reason she has to be everywhere at all times, every place, every day, 100 different places. Why? Because she can't say no. She can't say no to her loved ones. She can't say no to her friends. She can't say no to anybody in need. So she has got to go and be everywhere. Now some of you are like, "Ooh, I'm exhausted already." I had a friend that used to hang with me, and she said she'd need an Advil after being with me because I had exhausted her because of the pace I went. Well, the other morning when I'm studying, I'm reading through the Bible. Of course, those of us in the one-year Bible, we're in Isaiah right now, and do I love Isaiah. If you've had a hard week or you're having a hard time right now, do yourself a favor, read Isaiah 40. It is loaded. It's so blessed. But I want to jump before it. In Isaiah 26, the other day when I came upon this verse, I know it by heart in the King James, so that when I'm reading the New Living Translation, I'm like, wow, I like it. That was great. I memorized it in school. My first Christian counselor, Emmy Cravens, gave it to me, Isaiah 26:3. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee, because she trusts in you. Well, I'm reading it in my NLT, and it says, you will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose thoughts are fixed. Now listen, stayed, I like. Fixed, immediately I thought of, oh, that is me. I fixate, I get fixed on, what are we going to do about helping this? How are we going to help this person? What are we going to do about this? I become fixed on fixing. And in that moment, the Lord said, and you can ask my forgiveness right now. And I'm like, oh, you ask my forgiveness for being fixated on fixing things all the time. Fix this person, fix this child, fix this baby, fix this woman, fix this man. Rather than my heart fixed on the Lord and have peace as a result. No wonder I struggle with having peace. I'm too busy trying to fix everybody. And thank God you're not like that. Okay, so the omnipresent woman is always so involved in trying to fix the world, help God out. There's so much trouble. Well, I was thinking about DoorDash. I actually Googled it today because I kept thinking, I know the omnipresent woman. A woman had to have created DoorDash. You know, things moving fast. Get it here, get the food, feed the kids, get them here, get them shit. Okay, well, the omnipresent woman, you could almost describe her by Psalm 139, verse 7. Listen to this. I can never escape from your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. And this is David describing omnipresent God, who is always with him, whether he's in a cave, running for his life, on the throne, I mean, whatever. Omnipresent God is always there. Well, the omnipresent woman, okay, here comes the helicopters. Oh, it's the Coast Guard. Hey, Coast Guard. Okay, and there's another one. All right, something exciting is going on. Anyways, oh, the joy of being here on this balcony. Anyways, the omnipresent woman, the thing is, because she can't say no, she has to do 10 things in a day rather than the 5 that she would have preferred. She's running constantly, but the problem is, in her wanting to be there all the time for her family, her husband, her children, all her friends, she actually has an impulse to idolatry. She doesn't realize that she's almost causing people to become more intoxicated with her than with Jesus, more intoxicated with her provision, her comfort, her wisdom, than with God's. Years ago, my husband and I taught a Bible study, and one of the ball players one time called me DLJ, and I'm like, what in the world is DLJ? He said, well, you're like direct line Jackie. If I need to know a verse, man, I'd call you. If I had a question, had a problem, I'd call you. And at first, it really touched my heart, you know. Oh, that's cool, the ball players trust me, and they would ask me questions in scriptures. But then the Lord, again, Lord, forgive me for training people to rely on me and not on you. Do you do that? Have you ever been tempted to do that? So I want to DLJ, meaning direct line Jesus, not direct line Jackie, or direct line mom. It's amazing how moms feel almost responsible for every aspect of their children's lives, and their whole thought is, if I had been there, this wouldn't have happened. If I had been there, he wouldn't have had the accident. Okay, maybe you never think those things. Awesome. Another thing about the omnipresent woman is, in her desire to fix and help everybody and be there for everybody, if she goes to a party, she can't even enjoy the party. Because the minute she gets there, they're like, oh, Jackie, we're so glad you're here. We have this guest, and she's got so much trouble in her marriage, and I mentioned her that you might give her a few minutes. Well, I wish I'd learned younger what I've learned now. Because my immediate response would have been, oh, yes, I'll be glad to talk to her, but not yet. I need to say hello to people and spend a few minutes, have a couple brownies with chocolate fudge icing. But see, the omnipresent woman, she has to be there for everyone and get in on everything. And she almost actually thinks that's spiritual. Well, when my heart says yes to something, when deep inside I'm like, no, don't make me do it. Don't ask me one more thing. When I say yes, when in my heart I mean no, that starts breeding resentment that you're shocked later with, wow, that was a snarky remark. Where'd that resentment come from? Because I said yes when I should have said no. We talked a little bit about that last week, but let me show you what happens. We move through life, the omnipresent woman moves so fast that she gives a fast yes. She doesn't have time to reflect and respond. I was studying this the other day in Ecclesiastes 5:2 and 3, and it talks about going fast, making statements fast. And honey, as fast as I talk, you know the trouble I've gotten myself into. Well, John Wesley said this, though I'm always in haste, which means he's busy, he's got a lot on his plate, starts the whole Methodist movement and all. Okay, although I'm always in haste, I'm never in a hurry, because never is a hard word to say, but I never undertake more work than I can do with calmness of spirit. Oh my goodness. I don't even want to think of all the stuff I've done when my spirit has not been calm. But see, the omnipresent woman, something happens to her, and this, if you get that, this is one of the best things I've learned, is the omnipresent woman, because she's got to be everywhere, too many places at the same time. A few minutes here, a few minutes there. She ends up getting drawn into a crisis. And because, oh, I'm so glad you're here, and they, come here. And what happens, constantly getting drawn into a crisis because other people's poor planning becomes my emergency. I have spent so much of my life doing stuff because somebody else planned, pitiful planning, procrastinated, didn't get around to it, and guess who ended up having to pay for it? Wow, I'm the one that has to do it. Well, a friend of mine, I'm mentoring this precious girl. She said that someone sent her a text last night, said, hey, after the Bible study tomorrow, the leaders want to get together and talk, and sure hope you can be with us. Blah, blah. And she's looking at her like, no, I already have plans. If you had wanted me to participate, you would have had to tell me a couple of days ago. Women, all of us are busy. There's nobody not busy. So the fact that she said no, I'm so proud of her. I'm like, go girl. People's poor planning, decide at the last minute they're going to have this meeting. No, you have to give busy moms a little warning. I loved it. I was so proud of her. I'm like, go girl. Take off that junior God badge. Reflect and respond. Do you have time for that, or are you in such a hurry? I was thinking about the breathless, omnipresent woman. She's and her desire to please everybody and be everywhere. What the Lord has shown me again as I studied this. So many times I've been somewhere because someone wanted me there, but I wasn't there. I might have been present physically, but my soul wasn't present. My heart probably didn't have conversations I should have had, or probably didn't notice something I should have noticed because I was distracted. Present, but not present. Something to ponder. So, because I have a problem with wanting to please, I was trying to think about thinking of a person that you have a hard time saying no to. And my first thought came to my mind is my grandkids. I can't say no. Break into a song. I can't say no. And then I started thinking about how come Jesus was so good at every choice he made, every step he made, knew everything. Of course, because he was Jesus, he's God. Well, another aspect of that is that he was always about doing the will of the Father. What's interesting in Revelations, it says that you and I have been created for God's pleasure, and God's pleasure, when you translate it, means I've been created for God's will. You know, he chose me before Genesis 1:1. He has a specific script. So when I'm running around trying to do everything for everybody, often I might miss the very thing the Lord wants from me. Well, years ago, a couple scholarship Ken and I to a retreat in Colorado called Sunscape. And it's a pre-burnout retreat. It's not for when you get burned out in ministry. It's to teach you things to keep you from getting burned out. And I'm going to share something I learned there that has really helped me. A missionary from China, she said to me over lunch before I learned, I'll share the verse we learned that day, but she said, you know, Jackie, there's always time in every day for the will of God. There might not be time for all these other things, but there's always time for God's will. And so it's a discerning, reflect, respond, not immediately feel pressure. You know, somebody's crisis, it means I'm supposed to jump. You know, and do I have a paramedic suit on, or am I wearing a stethoscope and carrying a doctor's bag, emergency, call Jackie? So this is the verse they gave us to just help us monitor how quickly we say yes, how quickly we respond to a crisis, how quickly we move. In Mark 1:35 through 38, you know, Jesus is out with his disciples trying to demonstrate for them how you spread the gospel, and he's preaching, and a huge crowd gathered. And it literally said, in Mark 1:35 through 38, very early in the morning, Jesus went to a solitary place and prayed. Smart. Get away and pray. What was happening? Get ready. So he's coming back from talking to the Father when he runs into Peter. Peter with exclamation points like, where were you? And the expression is, everyone's looking for you. And he's staring at him. He's yelling, where were you? And what I love is that he said, let us go somewhere else. And when I first read that verse, I thought that was being sarcastic, like, everybody's looking for you. Let's go out the back door. Help me hide. Get behind that tree. No, the reason Jesus could go someplace out rather than the demanding crowd, the tyranny of the urgent, is he knew the will of the Father. So many of us can't, we're not as decisive, and we get swept up by the crowd, swept up by the urgency, swept up by the tyranny. That was a phrase people used years ago, the tyranny of the urgent. Well, Jesus never fell for that one because he had met with the Father. The Father told him what he wanted, so he knew exactly where to go. Now, some of you are like, I'm not sure if I hear it that clearly. The bottom line is, when I paused and asked God's forgiveness the other day for that fixing tendency in me, from that point on, it's interesting, the clarity that began to roll as I'm studying, putting this together. But I had to pause, ask forgiveness for the little fixer that I am, take my junior God badge off so I could begin to prepare, hopefully, to be a blessing to each of you. Well, remember, always enough time in every day for the will of God. So pause, reflect, respond. Father, is this what you want? See, the omnipresent woman actually sets herself up for disappointment pretty regularly. In fact, all junior God badge owners are constantly setting themselves up for disappointment because they get these great plans together and get all these things organized in their head, and they tell the plan and they do all the hard work, and then things go wrong and they're like, how could this be happening? See, the omnipresent woman, and the omniscient one does it, omnipotent, we'll cover that next week, they are constantly thinking they can control the outcome of various things they're involved in. Let me tell you, it's only by God's grace the outcome turns out to be good. You know, expectations. We've talked about this before in the other balcony chats about expectations are premeditated resentment. Well, the omnipresent woman has so many expectations of what she thinks she can get done. Remember, she said yes to 20 people when she only had time for 5. So she has great expectation of what she can accomplish and what God will do through her. You know, they always tack that on. Oh, but God will do it through me. Well, not if he didn't script it. Okay, so expectations. Think about that. What is it called? Expectation is defined as a premeditated resentment because you get all this stuff arranged, all this stuff done, and it falls apart. And you're like, oh no, I was expecting a 10, and I didn't even get a 2 today. We've talked about that one. 10 verses 5. We live in the world outside the garden. Life is never going to be a 10. Maybe for people who are on drugs or something, but life's never a 10. You can always count on a surprise. No matter how well you plan the vacation, no matter how well you plan the dinner, no matter how well you chose who's coming, no matter how well you look forward to the holiday, no matter how well you plan the gifts you're going to get. If the Lord wills is the smartest thing that anybody can say about any wonderful plan. Whether it's a plan to go to the mountains and see the change of the color on the trees, or the plan what you're going to do at Thanksgiving, or your plan for Christmas. This is an important time of year to learn this. Everything you're dreaming, everything you hope for, if the Lord wills. My sister-in-law and I were talking about some of the things that might be happening this fall, and we both kept saying to each other, okay, but we know if the Lord wills. You see, both of us have learned, and we've learned it the hard way, James 4, verses 13 through 16, where it says, don't say you're doing this, this, and that, unless you say, if the Lord wills. So, if the Lord wills, you make your plans, but remember, the omnipresent woman's like, I'll make this happen, I know I can do it, I have that strength, and we'll talk about her next week, the omnipotent one, who actually thinks she can be all these places at the same time. My daughter-in-law and I were talking about a part of Christmas this year, something we were hoping for, and she literally made the statement, man, I really hope this works out, but I know it has great potential for disappointment, because it's that time of year we love, so we get it hyped up to a 10, and we made it a 5, so we probably should give it up, say, if the Lord wills, and we both started laughing like, let's remember that, if the Lord wills, hopefully this will work out, but those of us who are mature do understand that at best, life is more chaotic than predictable. And see, that part of me, that controlling part of me is like, no, we can be wise, we can plan this out with more wisdom, we can plan this out with, think about it more and slow it down and make sure it's more accurate. And I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. I'm like, okay, Lord, forgive me, I did it again. And I feel like half the heaven's balcony's got their face in their hands like, is she still trying to get a 10 out of her holidays? Has she not learned yet to, not my will but thine be done? Speak to the Father, yield it, lay it at his feet. I read this the other day and I thought, wow, I want to live like this group. I was in Isaiah 36, and it's a passage where there's a place in Israel, it's major aqueduct outside of Jerusalem's walls. It's where everybody takes their linens and clothes to wash, but they have big linen areas where they trample out the linens to get the dirt out, and it's because of free flowing water. Well, I was reading in Isaiah 36 too, and it was talking about the enemy army, the Assyrians. They come up, and it says they came up to the aqueduct. Can you imagine a woman standing there doing her laundry, tramping along, and all of a sudden she hears horses, and she turns around, and here's this huge army. Guys on horseback in their armor, they've got their banners and their spears, and she's just trying to get her laundry done. I know that's not funny, but I kept thinking Isaiah was saying that's why was that word included? And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt it's for every woman, that the person who was doing their laundry looks at the army, the enemy of Israel, and what did it say? They just went right back to doing their laundry. And in that moment when I read that, the Lord said, Jackie, no matter what you hear, whatever disappointment, disillusioning, discouraging, whatever you hear, remember the army always shows up in the dailies of life. Discouragement, disillusionment, it shows up every day. Well, what do? What did we say? Fixed. I can look at the enemy and go back to fixing my eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of this race I'm running, the author and finisher, the enabler of my strength to run this race, but I'm supposed to run at his pace, not at what I think. So some of you need to get back to your laundry, stop looking at the enemy, stop looking at the discouragement, stop looking at the disappointment, stop looking at the shattered dreams, and look at the one who said, stay fixed on me. I will fix this. I have literally gone to bed at night saying, okay, I'm giving you this mess, and I'm going to sleep. And I'm not going to stay up worrying about what I'm going to do about it. I know you, Papa God. And I read this in Isaiah today. He holds the sheep, and he also holds the ocean. He's capable of both, holding this beautiful ocean and holding this little sheep. So rest and fix on fixing your heart and thoughts on that, and not trying to fix everybody in your life. Being a little Messiah. No more. Next week we'll do the Wannabe Omnipotent, and I'm telling you, most of the commercials I see on TV today are fanning the flame for women to be omnipotent. See you next week.